In this video, Diana Elder, accredited genealogist professional, shares how to identify individuals in sources, a U.S. Census example. This is a question submitted by a member of the Research Like a Pro study group or e-course and answered in the office hours session that's held monthly as part of the course. The question had to do with knowing which record belongs to an ancestor when multiple people with that same name existed. And Diana answers the question by showing how to build a profile of identifying information for that ancestor and gives some examples from her own research for clients and for herself. I hope you enjoy this excerpt from Office Hours.
And here are some tips for this idea of trying to identify individuals when you just don't know much about them. So you are going to build a profile for your ancestor. You're going to use everything. Remember that idea of source snobbery? Those family stories, that oral history, we just use that to the best of our ability. And then you are going to have to really reach out and gather records for other people that our ancestor was involved with. You know, you're going to have to gather up everything, all of his associates, his family members. You'll have to research all of these to try to figure out connections. And as you're doing this, you start looking for patterns and clues to the connections. It's really interesting as you are researching how things will start to come clear. You'll start to get some ideas, you'll start to get a hypothesis, and sometimes you'll change, but you'll begin to separate out and eliminate individuals. So one of my favorite tools for doing this is a good old spreadsheet. And you'll see here that I didn't use Airtable on this one. This was a Google Sheet, but I was trying to narrow down my Benjamin Cox in the 1820 and 1830 censuses. So what I did was I took all the Benjamin Coxes and I found all the ones in 1820 in the census who were in Indiana because I thought he had moved to Indiana by then. And I put in the citation. I just copied and pasted this from the Ancestry account. And then I also put in some Ohio ones as well because he'd been in Ohio previously. And then I knew basically when he was born, about 1791. So I would highlight things. For instance, right here, he was 45 and over in 1820. He was too old. So I made a note of that. Or if there was a good match, you know, I would note that. So I just started getting some notes in. And then I went to the 1830 census to see if I could find the same person in the same area and thus eliminate them. People online had Benjamin Cox in Monroe County, Indiana in 1830 because his daughters got married in a neighboring county. I wanted to kind of test that, but I could see that this 1820 census of Benjamin in Du Bois County, this Benjamin Cox is still in Du Bois. And so I'm going to eliminate him because he's still there. He hadn't moved to Monroe. So over here, and then 1840, he's there. And I know for sure my Benjamin Cox was in Arkansas by 1840. So can you see how I just took that same person across and said, nope, he's not, this is not my Benjamin Cox. And sometimes you can do this with probate too. You know, for instance, if you're doing a study of an individual and you find his probate and you realize, nope, that's not my ancestor, you can do something like this. So I continued researching these. This guy here is Randolph County. And then here he is, Randolph County, and here he is again in White River, Randolph. So he's definitely not the right one. And I kept doing this until I found that I had pretty much eliminated everybody based on some different things except for the Benjamin Cox of this area of Indiana, Delaware County. And it turned out, looking at a map, that it's right next, where he was living was right next to Monroe County. So it was right in the same area. Also, we had some fans. We have the Barbies, and he married a Barbie. Benjamin Cox married Keziah Barbie. And so having these Barbies that were also in Ohio and now they're in Indiana and then they're also in Monroe, that is good evidence. That's how we can use the friends, associates, and neighbors trying to find connections. So this didn't come clear to me right away. I had to do the research. I put it in the log. And then as I was doing that, I could start eliminating and start making the connections. So another project I did, this is the client one, and this was such a broad objective. The client was in Australia, and she had just a family story that William Traynor had emigrated to Australia. She had a lot of stuff in Australia about him. He worked a circus there, and she just thought that he had arrived about 1855. And she had his parents, John Traynor and Grace Dugan, and she had an about birth date in New York. But the stories that they had were all over the place. They said he'd worked on a sugar plantation, and so he could have been in anywhere in the United States. They had some kind of crazy stories. So how do you start doing this? And this is kind of a common name, and it is an Irish case. And as we know, there were a lot of Irish who immigrated to the US, in this era in the 1840s and 50s. So I just started off with William Traynor. I figured, okay, he should be in the 1850 census somewhere by name. And it turned out there were 18 in the United States. And I went through and I eliminated everybody but one based on census records. I also did some find a grave. I knew William was already in Australia by 1860. So anybody that was in this looked like they were the same people in 1860, then I would eliminate them. So I did my big spreadsheet. I ended up with one hit of a William Traynor in New Jersey, which is close to New York, and then just continued. I did the same thing with John Traynor in the 1840 and 1850 census, and actually figured out some good things, found a pretty good hypothesis of where he was, and we continued to work that case for a few more projects till the trail ran cold. But it can be done. We just have to realize that we put to work our spreadsheets and our brains and try to eliminate candidates until we have one or two left standing. So hopefully that gives you some ideas when you come up against a really difficult research problem of what you can do to make some inroads on it.